Welcome to History in 6, a place where we sample history in 6-minute increments. I'm your host, T. Melindle, and today in our journey through the American Revolutionary War, we're going to look at the fall of Fort Ticonderoga. Time is short, let's jump into it. Fort Ticonderoga held a commanding position at the intersection of Lake Champlain and Lake George, controlling the natural corridor between Canada and the American colonies. And the fort had a rich history of conflict. Most famously, in 1758, during the French and Indian War, a smaller French force repelled a much larger British army in a bloody battle at the fort. As the flames of the American Revolution ignited, Fort Ticonderoga once again found itself at the heart of the conflict. In May of 1775, American patriots led by Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold captured the fort from a small, unprepared British garrison. This early victory, which was the first offensive of the American forces, was significant for both morale and the invaluable artillery it provided. You see, these captured cannons were later transported to Boston during the winter of 75 and 76, placed on Dorchester Heights, and basically forcing the British to evacuate the city in March of 76. Beyond its material value, control of Lake Champlain-Lake George route was strategically important. It offered a natural invasion path from Canada and a vital defensive line for the Americans to prevent the British from gaining control of the Hudson Valley and bisecting the colonies. In 1777, the British planned a three-pronged attack to isolate New England by seizing the Hudson River Valley. General Burgoyne would advance south from Quebec to capture Fort Ticonderoga and then move towards Albany. Lieutenant Colonel St. Leger would advance eastward from Lake Ontario as a diversion, and General Howe would move north from New York City. By the summer of 77, Fort Ticonderoga was not as strong as it appeared. The fort had been neglected and fallen into disrepair. American forces were aware of a potential impending threat from the British. As such, they attempted to strengthen the defenses around the fort by constructing fortifications on Mount Independence and Mount Hope. These were strategically positioned to command the surrounding area. In April of 77, General Arthur St. Clair, a veteran officer, was appointed to command the garrison at Ticonderoga. Although the Americans knew that Burgoyne was advancing south from Canada, they were completely uncertain about the size and makeup of his forces. The late appointment of St. Clair and subsequent assessment that the existing garrison was, quote, greatly inadequate to the defense, unquote, shows the Americans were unprepared, or at least slow to recognize the true scale of the British offensive. You see, in June of 77, General Burgoyne commenced his advance from Quebec, leading a formidable army comprising of approximately 7,000 to 8,000 men. His ranks include seasoned British regulars, German auxiliary troops, loyal American colonists, Canadian militia, and a contingent of Native American allies. And the Native American scouts proved invaluable in gathering intelligence about the terrain and American positions. Their expertise in navigating the wilderness allowed them to effectively conceal the movements of the larger British force, giving them the element of surprise. But at the same time, their presence also carried a risk of alienating the local civilian population, potentially hindering British efforts to gain local support. Regardless, this diverse army embarked on a southward journey along the tranquil waters of Lake Champlain. By June 30th, they had reached the largely undefended Fort Crown Point north of Ticonderoga. On July 2nd, Burgoyne issued the order for his army to advance towards Fort Ticonderoga, deploying his forces strategically along on both the eastern and western shores of Lake Champlain. That same morning, General St. Clair, perhaps sensing the vulnerability of their position, made the decision to withdraw the American troops from the outpost on Mount Hope, which he deemed to be too exposed and susceptible to capture. It was during this period that British engineers made a crucial discovery that would ultimately dictate the fate of the fort. They immediately recognized the strategic importance of Sugar Loaf Hill. This was a hill that loomed over both Fort Ticonderoga and the fortifications they built on Mount Independence. Alarmingly for the Americans, this strategically vital height remained undefended. And this was a critical oversight, despite prior warnings and assessments of its vulnerability. General Gates, who held command previously, understood the tactical problem posed by Sugar Loaf. Figures like John Trumbull, Anthony Wayne, and even the wounded Benedict Arnold had previously climbed to the summit and recognized that artillery could likely be hauled to the top. The American failure to secure and fortify Sugarloaf represents a massive strategic blunder, an oversight that would have severe consequences, ultimately sealing the fate of Fort Ticonderoga. Capitalizing on this oversight, the British engineers swiftly began the task of clearing the dense terrain and constructing gun emplacements on the summit of Sugarloaf. They worked diligently, taking care to conceal their activities from the view of the American defenders below. As the British prepared their decisive move, the Americans within the fort quietly observed the first anniversary of their Declaration of Independence on July 4th. However, that very night, the British inadvertently lost a degree of their tactical surprise. Some of their Native American allies positioned on Sugarloaf lit fires, inadvertently alerting the Americans to their presence on the previously unoccupied height. By the morning of July 5th, the implications of the British presence on Sugarloaf became starkly clear to General St. Clair. With enemy artillery now overlooking the fort and its surrounding defenses, the American position had become utterly untenable. Recognizing the futility of attempting to defend the fort under such circumstances, St. Clair convened a council of war with his senior officers. During this crucial meeting, the decision was made to abandon Fort Ticonderoga and Mount Independence. St. Clair himself reportedly articulated the difficult choice he faced: to, quote, save his character and lose the army, unquote, by attempting a hopeless defense, or to, quote, save the army and lose his character, unquote, by ordering what would be perceived by outsiders as a cowardly retreat. St. Clair's decision to retreat, while strategically sound in the face of overwhelming British artillery superiority, was made with a clear understanding of the negative political repercussions he would likely face. So, under the cloak of darkness in the early hours of July 6th, the American garrison began its hasty evacuation of Fort Ticonderoga and Mount Independence. The withdrawal was conducted with as much speed and secrecy as possible, but inevitably the British advance guard soon detected their movement and began pursuit. By daybreak of July 6th, Burgoyne's army occupied both Fort Ticonderoga and the extensive fortifications on Mount Independence, without encountering any resistance. The ease with which they had captured this renowned fortress came as a surprise even to the British. The fall of the Gibraltar of the North, without a significant fight, underscored the decisive impact of the British securing the high ground on Sugarloaf. It demonstrated that even the most formidable fortification could be rendered indefensible when an enemy controlled the commanding terrain. This event highlights the critical importance of not only constructing strong defenses, but also ensuring the security of the surrounding strategic locations. The lack of a major battle for Fort Ticonderoga, despite its formidable reputation, serves as a stark reminder that even the most imposing fortifications are vulnerable to strategic placement of artillery. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Subscribe to get future content, and as always, have a great day if you want to.